Coming up on the Tall Mike Wine Podcast.
It bores me to tears.
But I know it doesn't.
The wine world, it just keeps growing and growing.
Yeah.
I don't know who's drinking all the wine.
Probably me.
It's Stacy Brsiscoe drinking all the wine. And then you went off to UC Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
That has got to be like the polar opposite of studying with the Jesuits.
Flowers. I taste flowers.
Put me in the bath for a short time, will you?
Yes. And suddenly we're British.
And now, the Tall Mike Wine Podcast.
The cell phones have been silenced. The wine has been poured, and it's a good thing I am thirsty. And just like that, the podcast begins. Episode 20 of the Tall Mike Wine Podcast. The wine podcast that's not all about wine. The wine podcast like no other. Ranked number 14 on the top 45 wine podcast list from FeedSpot. Heard in 28 countries on 5 continents. Greetings to Israel, the UAE, Serbia, and Montenegro. And in 42 of these United States and the nation's capital, real people listening in real cities like Bow, New Hampshire, Madison, Wisconsin, Bell Gardens, California, Augusta, Georgia, and even Bud Lake, New Jersey. It's great that you've made time to listen while you're doing whatever you're doing, driving, walking, running, doing the dishes, or maybe just sitting by a roaring fire, sipping some nice wine. I thank you. Now, if you're on the Apple Podcast app, rate the podcast. Write a review if you're feeling wordy. And if you're not, just sip a little more wine. It'll make you more wordy. If you need some official Tall Mike Wine coasters to properly set your wine drinking table, drop me an email and I'll send you a few. My email is tallmikewine@gmail.com. It's so great to be back at the winery with a real guest. We're in the Bombay room here at Nicholson Ranch in Sonoma with a real live guest. She is sitting right across from me, holding the other microphone. She is a wine journalist based right here in Sonoma. She writes and creates content for publications and websites like The Wine Enthusiast, Sonoma Magazine, Picks the Drop, 750 Daily, and many others. She speaks at wine industry conferences and judges at wine competitions. So what I'm trying to say is she's busy. And she's studying for her diploma-level certification with the Wine and Spirits Educational Trust. And now her life is complete. She's on my podcast. Stacy Brsiscoe, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
You're busy.
Yes, I am. Very busy all the time.
Thanks for making time.
I literally 10-minute drive, so.
Okay. You live downtown Sonoma, sort of?
Yeah, sort of.
It's nice there.
No, it is. It's really nice. I like to say we live close enough that we can walk, and we're what we call stumbling distance back home.
Yeah.
So we can go to like whatever tasting room, wine bar we want, but we're far enough away that we don't get like tourist foot traffic. So we're not,
right.
yeah. So we're not bothered
all
by
hours of the night.
Right.
Well,
Exactly.
it's not all hours in Sonoma. It's like 9 at night.
Oh, it's like sleepy hours.
It totally. What is Picks the Drop?
It is a new online publication, and the website Picks.com was started by Paul Mabry, who, if you don't know, you should Google him because he's kind of like a huge, big entrepreneur in the wine industry. The editorial platform for that website is called The Drop. So that's why it says Picks the Drop. People keep asking me, is it industry facing or is it consumer facing? And it's honestly a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Like I said, it's new. So I've only just written 2 articles for them, and one was about winemakers who double as firefighters, and the other one was about specifically one woman who is a ICU nurse as well as runs her family, and not just runs, they literally launched in 2020 amid the pandemic and all of that, and she's running back and forth from the ICU to the vineyard to the cellar.
Okay, you're busy. She's busier.
Yeah, she's busier.
Stacy Brsiscoe is all over social media and on the internet.
I am on the webs, on the interwebs.
And she wrote an article for Sonoma Magazine that just came out called Wine's Rising Stars.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite couple of stars?
Yeah, so that was a collaborative. A couple of writers contributed to that. I mean, I loved everybody that I profiled, but definitely Salvador de la Cruz from Ludor Wines right here in Sonoma. He's very new, but his father immigrated here, came up as a vineyard manager, and he of course grew up little kid having to like tend the vines at like
Sure.
9-10 years old.
Sure, you're out there
Right.
with all the adults
And
doing all the
he's
job.
like, I never want to do this when I grow up. I never want to do this. And so his dad's like, okay, well, if you don't want to be in the field, like maybe you should learn like how to be in the cellar. Okay, so then I don't have to be out in the elements, because he's like, in the winter it's freezing, in the summer it's hot. Anyways, I got to talk to him. He told me his like whole life story. He's so great. And I think, he doesn't have a brick and mortar place right now, but if you go to Ludor Wines, you can look him up. And he was very kind enough to send me a few of his wines. There was not one that I did not like.
Lunar?
Ludor.
Ludor.
Yeah,
Ludor.
Ludor. Yeah.
Okay. I have heard of that.
Yeah.
And who else?
The Klein sisters. So if you know Klein.
Yes, the
family
next
wine,
generation.
Hillary and Megan.
Okay.
And they've started their own wine brand called Gust Wines. And they're focusing on wines made from the Petaluma Gap AVA.
Okay.
So they've got a Syrah, a Pinot, and a Chard. And they're just a ball of energy, the two of them together. They're really fun to interview. And they also sent me some wines, and they sent me a little beanie that has Gust Wines on it.
Okay.
And I'm such a beanie girl. And it's appropriate because the Petaluma Gap, it's all about the wind, right? So I thought that was very appropriate swag.
The wind and the fog.
The wind and the fog. And girls got to protect her hair, So
Totally.
I love the beanies.
Okay, good to know. You also have a thing you do, and I think this might have been one of your first things, Briscoe Bites.
Oh, yeah.
Is that still a thing?
Yes.
Is that a blog?
Yes.
Okay. That's how you got onto my radar. Somehow I saw Briscoe Bites. I was Googling something having to do with wine and a specific wine, and there was Briscoe Bites. I'm like, what the heck is Briscoe Bites?
Yeah.
And there you were.
Yeah, I started that many moons ago. And it's called Briscoe Bites because I thought I was going to write about food. Because to make like a very long story short, I was not always in the wine industry. I was not always a writer. And so I started a blog to kind of just like get my fingers moving. But what really piqued my interest when I was writing about food was my wine pairing. And so then it transitioned to like, okay, this is where I'm going to keep all my wine notes so I don't get confused. And I have like a place where everything is cataloged. But then it turned into, if I'm going to write about bubbly, I might as well figure out like, how do you make champagne? And how is that different than Prosecco? And then it turned into like a website about discovering wine. And now it's just kind of a mishmash of a little bit of everything. I post a lot of stuff that I write. I post a lot of news things. I still do some wine reviews, but since I've been studying, I haven't had a lot of time to taste wines that don't have to do with my class.
So it's the aspiring food writer who discovers wine and then can't get enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's not uncommon.
Yeah.
Right? Where people get into wine like, oh, wait, there's a lot here.
Yeah.
This is interesting.
It's interesting. And the people are interesting.
Right. Yeah, there's so many interesting people in the wine world.
Yeah.
And I think they all have amazing stories to tell. And that's one of the reasons I like to drag them in here and talk to them because, people drink wine and think, oh, this wine's great.
Yeah.
And I realize there's so many different stories out there in the world of wine.
Yeah.
Like you just told me about a firefighter who's also a winemaker and an ER nurse who started a winery during the pandemic. It's like, well, those two people, I want to know more.
Yeah.
Right?
Also, I think the other thing about the people in the wine community is, and I'm sure not everybody agrees with this, but at least I've been very fortunate that the people that I've come across have been really kind and welcoming. And as a new writer, that was scary and hard when it was just me and my blog and my thoughts. And I had people that would like comment on my posts and be like, you don't know anything. Like, what are you talking about? Your writing is stupid.
Haters.
But yeah, but I had enough people say, no, your writing's cool and you have really good thoughts, keep going, that I was like, okay, then I'm not going to be ashamed to pursue this new passion of mine. Yeah, haters are going to hate, but I feel like there's less of those.
I think that if you are following your own idea, your own heart, your own approach, and you just go for it, then people get it.
Yeah.
And they're going to love it. And the people that are a little bit, I don't know, is that jealousy? What is it? If you're not talking about wine the way I think you should talk about wine, you're not taking it seriously, or what? Where does that come from?
Exactly. And I have to say, somebody asked me this before. So my website goes back to like 2015 or something, and I have not taken down anything that I've written. So there's probably posts up there with mistakes and stuff like that. But the other thing that's really interesting to me, especially now that I'm studying through the WSET, is the way that I wrote about wine back then. And I still do this, in my personal notes and stuff. It's a lot more poetic. It's a lot more like, this is how I feel and this is how it tastes. And like
back then?
Yeah.
So it wasn't so academic.
It was not academic at all. And so I think a lot of people took issue with that because I was a personal trainer. I was not trained in wine. I studied English language literature. I did not study enology or anything like that. So the way I approach wine is different. It's something that I'm trying not to lose now that I'm like in this academic world right now. I think if I have like a message for people is like, don't get freaked out about everybody who thinks like, yeah, this smells like pomegranate and red cherries. If that's not your pomegranate or your red cherry, then call it what you think it is. It's totally fine.
I tell people that here at the winery all the time. We have notes on the tasting menu that give you a little bit of a guide as to what the wine might taste like to you. And people are always asking, well, I don't taste that. I say, well, your palate's not broken. Yeah. You just don't have the same palate as whoever wrote that note. Right. Everybody's different. Everybody's got their own idea of what wine tastes like.
Everybody is
and their own way of just talking about wine. Wine's a very complex subject.
Yep.
If you can take it and talk about it in any way, shape, or form that speaks to your own heart, then I think people are into it.
Yeah, wine's for enjoyment. And so I think anybody that's telling you your thoughts are wrong or they're just taking it too seriously. It's fermented fruit, people. Right. Yeah, just enjoy it.
So you also write for Wine Industry Advisor, is that right?
Yeah, I'm actually the managing editor.
Oh, that's right. You got the big title just recently.
Yeah.
I remember reading about that.
Yeah. Wine Industry Network, probably people know what that is. It's a resource for the wine industry.
That is more about the business of wine. I want to admit something to you about that.
I know what you're going to say.
It bores me to tears.
But I know it doesn't. I know it doesn't because the conversation that we were having about wines that sell and wines that don't sell and who's buying a vineyard and who owns property, that's all wine business.
I know.
When you talk to your customers about their tasting notes, that's wine business.
I know, but when we start talking about dollars and cents and the what you were just writing about recently, the kerfuffle having to do with the supply chain.
Yeah, but if there's no wine bottles to bottle the wine, how are your consumers going to get?
I understand, but I can't get through those articles because they're just a little dry.
Well, you don't have to read them.
But that's just the business side. I managed restaurants for 25 years and had to sit in meetings with the P&L statements and talk about where all the money went, where all the money's coming from, and that kind of stuff just really bored me. I'm like, I don't care. Let me get out and talk to the people and pour some wine for them. Well,
okay. So I will tell you this. When I first started writing about wine, I was not interested in wine business stuff at all. I was doing a lot of consumer-facing things. I was writing for like Edible magazine. I worked for the Chronicle a little bit, and it was all consumer facing. And so I was really nervous when I got my first job at Wines and Vines because it's industry facing. But it turns out that there are people in the industry. And when I find people, I'm like, there's my story. So I kid you not, my first wine industry related piece that I had to write was about tasting room dishwashers. And I go, how do I make this interesting? But I thought of people. Okay. I said, okay, I got married at Testarossa Winery. Right. They have to host a lot of people. Mm-hmm. What kind of dishwasher do they use? So I called the woman that helped like coordinate the wedding and was like, what the heck do you do with all those? And she was like, I am so glad that you asked that because it is like one of the most important employees in our tasting room.
Well, it certainly is.
See, you run a tasting room. And then I went to the opposite end of the spectrum. I found the guy who runs his tasting room off of like basically like a little shack. And I was like, do you even have a dishwasher? Turns out he does. He bought like an old one and refurbished it and stuff. So my point is wine industry stories have people and you just have to find them.
Well, I started envisioning spreadsheets in my head and then I'm like, oh God, spreadsheets.
I hear you.
Because the dollars and cents, all that stuff.
Because the other thing that happened to me too was when Wines and Vines turned into data analytics completely.
Oh my God.
And my editor said, you're going to have to write about data. Okay, I don't want to lose my job, first of all. But I said, you're going to have to teach me how to do that.
Right.
So I got really freaked out because I don't do numbers.
No, you got your degree in literature.
Yeah, I don't.
So you can write. And the language is great. It's the words are your friends. But the numbers, this is the way I've always been. The words are my friends. I like to tell stories.
Yeah.
But don't make me add and subtract and multiply and divide.
Or like the worst part is like figuring out the percentages. It's like if they made this amount of money, how much went to DTC and I'm like, I can't do that. And so you know what I did? I found the people. Because I would look at the data, okay, like usually there was like a data analyst who would break down what the data meant. Okay, this is affecting winemakers, say. So I like would call up winemakers and I'd be like, I just read this data. Is this affecting you at all? And then there was my story.
Okay, you're brilliant. You're brilliant. All that talk about the wine business makes me need a drink.
Yes, we need to taste this.
So I have brought 2 wines in today to taste as we chat. The first one is a white wine. It's an Albariño, and typically you're going to say, oh, it's from Spain. But no, this is an Albariño from Uruguay, and it's a 2020, so it's pretty fresh. This is stainless steel fermented Albariño from Bodega Garzón, Garzón. That'll be in the show notes. And it's fermented in stainless steel, and it's left on the lees in the tanks for 3 to 6 months, so it has a nice texture to it. What do you smell?
Apples.
Apple? What else? Come on. Do the thing.
No, it's funny because the first thing I really did smell was apples. And then you get, the other thing I like about Albariño is it has that little bit of floral note to it, and like generically you can say white blossom, but I like to pull out like chamomile, the fresh chamomile.
I totally get that. And I do get apple.
Lemon and lime.
I also get like a real like whetstone thing happening.
Yeah, I call it, and again, people don't take this seriously. This is just my personal note. I call it a seaside minerality.
There you go.
It's like, it reminds me of standing on the beach, like when the fog's rolling in.
Right. You can smell the salt.
Yeah.
Because this has a little of that too. I get a little bit of tropical fruit, a little bit of banana almost on the nose.
Oh, I don't. Thank God I hate banana.
The things people tell me on this show. This has great acidity. My mouth is just watering. It's got a lot of, I get like honeydew on the palate, almost melony.
What I like is they did a good job with the lees aging here, because it's not too like yeasty or like overt in those kind of leesy notes, but it does complement the acidity. It's a smooth mouthfeel with like a nice thin line of acid riding through from front to back. So they did a very nice job on that.
It just finishes so clean.
Yeah.
And my mouth is just still watering.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. Oysters, please.
This was the, oysters. Yeah, for sure. Bring them on. Or the ceviche.
Does this bodega room or whatever have room service?
This is the Bombay room.
Sorry, the Bombay room.
It does not have shellfish service. Sorry. This is the last bottle of a case of this that I bought at the beginning of the summer, because I spend the very early part of the spring trying to find my ultimate summer wine that I can buy for cheap.
Yeah.
And I found this.
Okay.
And I think it was under $10.
Wow.
I know.
Well, that's the thing.
And I bought a case of it. I'm like, this is my summertime jam. So at night, I get home after a day and it's been hot and it's still warm outside.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit outside and drink this.
That's the thing about a lot of like, lesser known regions. You end up getting these really good wines.
Well, this is
really,
certainly
really good deals.
First wine I believe I've ever had from Uruguay.
Yeah, I don't know that I've had a lot from Uruguay. I may have had like a Tannat from Uruguay.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's obscure.
Yeah. Well, this was back when I was predominantly blogging and maybe freelancing. I remember I made a comment saying I had never had Tannat before. And someone was like, I work for a company in Uruguay that makes Tannat. Would you like to try some? And I was like, yes, please. Thank you.
The wine world, it just keeps growing and growing.
Yeah.
And growing.
Yeah.
I don't know who's drinking all the wine, but
it's probably me.
Probably you.
Probably me.
It's Stacy Brsiscoe drinking all the wine. Stacy has placed the bottle that we're sampling from right on top of my tall Mike Wine coaster. What do you think of the coasters?
Well, it looks like you in cartoon form.
It is me in cartoon form.
It's a funny thing. Because it's a cartoon, you can pull this off. But I always tell people, don't take selfies of your nose in the glass. Like, I've never seen a selfie where somebody's like, look, I'm smelling wine,
right.
And it looks good.
Right.
It just, yeah.
That was a picture taken of me over 10 years ago. You'll notice the goatee in the picture is very black. And the goatee on the real person is not.
See, I wouldn't have unless you called it out.
And that was probably the best picture anybody's ever taken of me with a wine glass in my hand.
Yeah, so that's the thing is I have a few photos of like my nose in the glass, but they are professional photos. If someone else can get a photo of you drinking wine, that I've seen those look good.
Well, I have a bigger than average nose. Your nose looks average sized.
Thank you.
So yours probably is all right in a picture.
Well, thank you.
Some wine glasses I can't even get my nose into.
Oh, really? No, I can put my whole face in.
Well, I mean, these are Burgundy glasses. They're big. They're wide and round. If it's a narrow glass, I'm like, conk, I hit my nose.
That sounds like a personal problem.
I have a few. You are a Bay Area person. You grew up in San Francisco.
I did.
You were educated by the Jesuits. Very nice.
Yes, I was.
I noticed that.
Yes.
Like, oh, she went to a Jesuit high school.
Yes, I went to St. Ignatius High.
That is odd. Did you wear the sweater? Was it a sweater? Was it skirts? What was it?
We didn't have a uniform.
You didn't?
No, we had a dress code. You had to wear polo shirts and anything that wasn't jeans.
What did you usually choose? Skirts? Khakis?
Like pants? I don't know.
Well, if they're not jeans.
Yeah, then they were like khaki pants.
We call chinos.
When I was in high school, like Dickies were really cool.
Oh, yeah. They're still cool.
Okay.
I think.
Sure.
Will somebody write to me, please, and tell me if Dickies are still cool?
Yeah, I was always like a pants person. I was never like a big skirt girl.
All right. And then you went off to UC Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
That has got to be like the polar opposite of studying with the Jesuits. Because UC Santa Cruz, it's Santa Cruz, man. It's all good.
Okay. I think there's something to be said, though, first of all, because remember, yes, it is a Jesuit school, but it is in San Francisco.
Right.
So we
so
were
it's
not
the liberal end of the Jesuit spectrum.
Yeah, we were not like learning to be monks or anything that. No. And then I went to Santa Cruz for school. So go Bananas Legs, woo!
And you studied English literature.
Yes.
Were you planning on writing the great American novel?
It's funny that you asked that because that is what my dad would like me to do.
Your dad?
Yeah, my dad.
Okay.
He would love for me to write the next great American novel. I'm not going to take that off the table because you never know when inspiration hits.
You didn't know you were going to be a wine writer?
No, I hated wine in college. I hated wine for many years.
What was your drink of choice in college?
I didn't.
What?
No.
At UC Santa Cruz?
No.
I don't believe it.
Once, I guess if I was going to have something, it had to be like super, super sugary.
Sure.
So like a margarita that was like super blended and fruity.
Right.
There used to be like a Hawaiian place downtown that made a Mai Tai that was probably like as big as my head. I was
Love
like,
me some Mai Tais.
so I would sip on those things, but I didn't really drink anything. And I remember tasting wine for the first time because I was in college. I was a sophomore. I was studying Italian. I also almost minored in Italian. And my housemate came back from Italy. And he was the one guy in a house full of girls. And he said, I spent 6 months in Italy and the wines were amazing. Mm-hmm. And I brought some back and I really want you girls to taste it and enjoy it, Danger. And so we're like, yay, of course. This sounds great. And I feel really bad because I wonder if it was a good wine and maybe I would know that now. But and he was like, you don't like it? And I couldn't.
But you know this now that Italy is not the best place to start because the wines are typically rustic.
It was very rustic.
For the American palate, people raised on soda pop and milk, the New World style wines that are very fruit forward and round and delicious are what you would want to start with.
Yeah.
And starting with something from Italy.
Which is why, actually, it's funny that you bring that up because once I finally did start drinking wine, the wine that I was like, okay, maybe I could drink wine was a super fruity Lambrusco.
There you go.
So Italy, there you go.
Everybody comes in through the sweet wine door.
I guess.
Right?
Yeah.
And then you get to the slightly drier white wines.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, I can do this.
Right.
Okay.
Well, because remember, I was coming from margaritas and
right. No.
Mai Tais.
Again, if you grew up in America, you drink a lot of soda pop and milk.
Yeah. And
your palate is not going to take earthy, rustic flavors or, 3 years in old oak barrels.
Right.
With that weird, this tastes like dirty wood, you know?
And the purple stains on your teeth.
Yeah, and you're not going to be a college student and say, "Oh, this is really complex and interesting."
Yeah, it was not.
And you're like,
Well, and my parents don't drink. I didn't have any background culture or a benchmark or anything. Yeah.
They didn't drink at all?
No.
Wow.
My grandpa would drink beer, but that's about
okay.
it.
So grandpa had beer.
Yeah, grandpa
once in a while. Was he around?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's still around. He just turned 90.
Woo!
Happy birthday, Grandpa.
Shout out to Grandpa. 90 years old.
Yeah.
Have a beer.
Yeah. Why not? Shot in a beer.
Do you remember what beer he drank?
I remember it was in a can.
That narrows it down a little bit.
I know. I don't really know.
So you wrote for the Chronicle, the San Francisco Chronicle.
I did.
What was your beat when you were with the Chronicle?
I was there on a contract while they were building a website, and I'm not sure if it's there anymore, but it was, so I guess you would call my beat wine. It was wine.
Oh, okay. Did you work with the other wine people there?
Yeah. Yes. It's funny. People always ask that, and I didn't think about it at the time. I want to say, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but I think Esther had just started around the same time I had, or she'd only been there for
Esther
Mobley. Yeah. And so she sat like right kind of next to me. I started there. I was just an editor. I didn't write.
Did you go into the office there on 5th and Mission?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was just a BART ride down from where I was living. So
cool.
It was fine. I started there. I was just editing wine reviews that were going to be posted on their website. But the project that I was working on got kind of pushed back because of like technical things. And so my managing editor there said, hey, while we're kind of hanging around and waiting for the technical stuff to roll over, why don't you try writing a few reviews? And I was like, oh, because I didn't fancy myself a writer.
But reviews of wine.
Yeah.
So
like,
you weren't ready.
Yeah.
You could write.
I had my blog, but I was like, I don't know, man. So
you already had the blog.
Yeah.
So you're already taking a stab at it.
Yeah.
And now this is like in the newspaper.
Yeah. So
wow, that's intimidating.
So I took my first trip up Sonoma, and I went all the way from like San Francisco all the way up to Healdsburg, and I stopped at like a few different places. I spent the weekend, stopped at a few different places, and then I ended up writing like a couple of reviews of wherever I stopped. I wrote reviews, and just like your experience, they were meant to be kind of, like except for the consumer. So it wasn't like I walked in there with a Chronicle badge, like I'm here on business. No, it was just like, hey, like I went here. These are the wines they have on offer. Here's a short story, and here are like the top wines to try or something.
Like a lifestyle piece.
Yeah.
Simple, easy.
Simple and easy. And it was a great way to kind of be like, okay, maybe I can write about wine and not just read about it and correct other people's grammar on it. I can do that. And then the travel editor there was like, hey, I heard you're writing. Do you want to like do some wine travel writing for me? And those went into the Sunday paper. That was like my first, oh my God, like grabbed a couple of copies and sent them to my parents.
The
like,
heavy edition.
Yeah.
Here's the Great American Novel, Dad.
Yeah. So that was really like the first step I got into professionally writing about wine. And I learned a lot there just about writing and interviewing and, kind of all the things that go into making a good wine story besides, drinking the wine.
I think that's great though, because we touched on this before. If you write instinctively, I've never written. I don't know if I can write. And then you start writing just what's coming out of here, your heart.
Yeah.
And you find that, oh, this is my voice.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah.
It actually works. You just have to use it.
Yeah. The other interesting thing too is people always say like, write what you know. But I think what really interested me in wine was I was writing about things that I don't know. And so it forced me to ask the questions.
Write what you know is more like if you're going to write the novel, then write the novel based on what you know. Like if I was going to write a novel, I'd write a novel based at a winery.
I don't know.
In Sonoma.
You can write what you don't know. You could write what you want to discover.
Well, from a journalistic standpoint, journalism is all about finding out what you don't know, right? The answers to the questions.
But I feel like the best great American novels were written about things that people don't know. People that are like thinking about things that are outside the box. Instead of writing the answers, they're writing all the questions down, just in story form.
So tell me, what is the great American novel? And you must have read a few of them at UC Santa Cruz. Which one stuck to your brain?
I can tell you that my senior thesis was on A Passage to India.
Oh, wow.
So that's got to be up there. My favorite probably author, I hate to do that because you have to go like, oh, well, like what genre and what time period?
No,
and
you don't have to have a favorite anything. You can list a couple. Or you can say, no, I don't want to answer that question.
One of my favorite authors is always Virginia Woolf.
Okay.
I love Virginia Woolf. I don't think there's ever been a Virginia Woolf book that I read that I didn't like. And then if you're going to talk about Virginia Woolf, you have to talk about Gertrude Stein, and she's just crazy, but she's so cool. So I'm like a huge book nerd. I will read. It's crazy because I'm like studying and I'm writing and I'm doing all this stuff. But if I don't have a for pleasure book on my like by my side in my hand at all times, I will like mentally go insane.
What is it right now?
I am reading. I always get his name wrong because do you know the guy that wrote A Man Called Ove or Ov? Frederick Beckman.
I know the book. I don't recall the guy's name. It's
Frederick Backman or something like that. Anyways, it's his newest book that just came out in paperback, and it's called Anxious People. And so I read Ove and I loved it. So I just I bought all of his books and I've read all of his books. And he's an amazing writer. He's so funny. He'll say things and it's funny because that's just the way it is.
Right.
You know?
It's that gift of having a talent for dry humor.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying anything overtly funny, but the way I say it,
yes,
the way I put my words together, you will laugh.
Yes.
And you're not even there's no joke.
Yeah.
There's no joke.
No, it's not. And that's the thing is nothing he's writing about is technically funny.
And some of it's even tragic. A Man Called Ove has some real tragic parts to it.
But his internal dialogue and his crotchety old man nature is just hilarious. He's a great writer.
So what's the name of the current book?
It's Anxious People.
Anxious People. That's right. Okay, you told me that.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. What else do I have on my list here? Oh, the Game Changer wine.
The Game Changer.
Do you remember the first time you sipped wine and were like, wait, I like this. Wait, this is interesting.
Are you asking me this because you've heard this story before? Because I feel like I tell this story all the time.
No, okay. I don't know you. We just met today.
I know, but I swear this story has to be out in the world somewhere.
Okay. And full disclosure, we just met today. I've read your blog a few times.
Okay.
We're friends on Facebook now because I wanted to get in contact with you to get you on the. What is this? This is a podcast. But I haven't extensively read your work.
Okay.
I've never heard you tell the story. So now tell me the story.
Okay. So I feel sorry for my husband if he ends up listening to this story because he hears it all the time. And he was witness to it.
He better be listening to the podcast.
So, okay. I was already married. It was one of our anniversaries or Christmas. We were out at a dinner.
Okay.
And so I was already into wine in so much that I would spend the time to pair wine with dinner. And when we went out to dinner, we would go out of the way to ask a sommelier for help to pair wine with our food. And so the restaurant's still in existence, but it's not what it used to be. It was Alexander's in Cupertino in the old location. All you kids in the South Bay, you know what I'm talking about.
It's a steakhouse.
It is a steakhouse. I ordered the fish. Anyways.
Of course you did.
Yes. It was a 2013 Pinot Noir from Patricia Green that we had at our table.
Wait, this is recently then?
No.
It might have been in 2015 that you had that wine.
Maybe.
That's as early as you could have had.
Yeah, maybe it wasn't in 2013 then because I remember my husband tried to re-buy me the wine and he was like, oh, I had to get you the 2013 because they didn't have the vintage that we had at the restaurant. Okay.
Right, so Patricia Green.
In any event, it was a Patricia Green.
Pinot Noir from what appellation?
See, I don't even remember.
So what was that? What was that epiphany like?
So the epiphany went like this. Okay, it smells really good. Yeah, it smells like a Pinot Noir. It smells like a Pinot Noir I'm going to like. And I sipped it. And here's the thing. This was the first time that I ever tasted a wine that didn't just taste like wine. It went beyond the I taste the red fruits that make up a red wine and I taste the oak that it was probably aged in and all of this stuff because I sipped it and I said, flowers. I taste flowers. I taste violets and roses and daisies and I just taste all of these flowers. And my husband's like, you got to calm down because you are really loud right now. And I'm like, but do you taste it? It tastes like flowers.
Wow, I love this.
And that was the first time that I realized that wine could have all these levels and depth to it. That just blew my mind.
I bet they sold a lot of that wine that night.
Oh, yeah.
People at the other tables. I'll have what she's
having.
I want to taste the flowers.
I want to
taste the flowers now.
It was the most amazing thing. I really like flowers too, just FYI.
I love that story. I taste
flowers.
I think the first time I ever sensed the oak on a wine was a Pinot. I was into wine, and then I moved across the street from this wine shop. The guy that owned the shop, John. Hello, John. I would walk in the afternoon just to say, hey, John, how's it going? And he'd say, "Oh, we have one of the sales reps here. You should taste some of these wines." The guy said, "This is a Pinot Noir from Carneros." And as I stuck my nose in the glass and closed my eyes, because that's usually what I do, I felt as though at that moment I was inside of that oak barrel. And that was the first time I'd really gotten that, like, oh, there's the barrel. Wow, I'm inside the barrel.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, too, because I don't feel like I've never not smelled oak, but I think what you start to appreciate is the quality of the oak versus like, you know, your Costco tractor shed red. You clearly like they use like oak chips or vanilla flavoring or like whatever it is that they do to make it taste like it went into a barrel. But the moment that you smell something and it doesn't necessarily smell like a barrel, but it has like spices and these other kinds of aromas.
The manufactured oak taste and smell versus the real deal, which you only get from aging it in a real barrel.
Right, exactly.
For a number of years or a number of months anyway. I tell people here, we make wine the old-fashioned way, the slow way, the expensive way. Because that's just the way it is.
And that's wine business.
Gosh, I did it again. Let's have the next wine.
Yeah.
I brought a red wine in to share. This is the grape is
Aglianico.
Commonly known in Italy, one of the big grapes in Italy, southern Italy, where it gets hot, because this grape is a dark, thick-skinned mofo. Aglianico is mostly Italian wine, but this one is from Paso, Robles.
It smells really pretty.
I smell flowers.
I do actually. I really do smell flowers on this.
Super flowery.
I smell like deep violets.
All right, so this one's been aging a while. This is a 2011 Aglianico from a winery down in Paso Robles called Villa Creek. They are very small. They have their own estate vineyard called the Luna Matta Vineyard. And they made 200 cases of this wine. Wow. So it's tiny. And the way they did it was they fermented the grapes. 60% were whole clusters. So
that's why it smells a little bit like candy fruit. Yeah.
Right. You get that extra bigness to it. It's got a richness to it. It's a very, very dark colored wine.
It is.
Aglianico is one of the black grapes. Is it one of the grapes with red flesh and red juice?
Isn't that Alicante Boucher?
Alicante Boucher?
Yeah.
I think it is, but I wasn't sure if this also was one of those grapes. I know there's a name for those grapes.
There is, and I should know it.
You should know it because you're studying for your diploma.
But I'm sure it's like a French word that I wouldn't say right anyways.
No. We smell the flowers. What else do we smell?
I do. I smell the flowers. I smell like herbal things too, like marjoram and tarragon.
Dried basil. Mm-hmm. Maybe tarragon. Mm-hmm. What's the fruit? It's like really dark red fruit, but
I like boysenberry for this one.
Okay, I like that. I was going to say more like plum.
Yeah, I would say red plum. I don't know if it would be stewed though, so much as like poached. You know, just like gently touched with the heat.
Wait, poached and stewed? I guess stewed is a long time.
Yeah, stewed's like I'm making jam right now.
Poached is
like
a short
prepare
time.
Me for a pie.
Put me in the bath for a short time, will you?
Yes, and suddenly we're British.
This wine is big on the palate. It's very rich. It's certainly going to turn my teeth a darker color.
Oh yeah, I can feel it on my tongue.
Which I love. Yeah, it sits on the tongue for a while. Okay, so we got 60% whole cluster fermentation.
I think that was a smart move because it keeps the fruits fresh instead of just, sticking in the...
Well, sometimes it can get you a vegetal quality, though, especially in Pinot.
Whole cluster? Well...
I think in Pinot, whole cluster is like, okay, now it's kind of green.
Yeah, or you get the overly kind of that candied... Again, I don't want to say it, but banana and stuff like that. Like if you think about carbonic...
Stacy hates bananas, by the way.
Stacy hates bananas. But his whole cluster almost kind of gets that kind of carbonic feeling.
Fruit on steroids.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody up in Washington State recently about a wine they're making a Syrah. And they're not doing whole cluster. They're destemming the fruit. Mm-hmm. And then they're drying the stems in the sun,
putting them back in.
And then putting them in.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
For kind of a spicier feel.
Yeah.
And I got a barrel sample from them. And it was really good.
So it worked?
It's going to be this big, meaty Syrah with some spice to it.
Did it add the spice?
I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
I'm like... It's a barrel sample.
Yeah.
So if you taste a barrel sample, it's like this wine won't be ready for another year.
Yeah.
So you have to take all the really condensed flavors and try and break them down.
Yeah.
What's this going to be like when it breaks down? And I'm not a winemaker.
I know it's hard. Like I give credit to the people that, judge futures. Like I've yet to have that job, and you have to have like really good analytical skills, I think, at that point.
Well, you have to just taste a lot of wine.
Yeah.
You got to taste and taste and taste.
Yeah.
That's really the key, I think. So if you were to be stranded on a desert island, now these questions are always, to me, funny because like, if you were stranded on a desert island, the last thing you wanted to worry about, what wine would I have? It'd be like, no, I'd be more concerned with getting the hell off of the desert island.
The problem with that question is that I'm on a desert island and I assume that it's hot. So I'm going to want something like, I'm going to want a white wine.
Okay.
But is there a refrigerator? Can I keep it cold?
Is there a wine fridge that will keep my wine at 65 degrees?
Yes.
My red wine?
But I want white wine, so it's going to have to be at least like 57.
No, you can throw your white wine in the ocean.
No. Because I'm not going to dive in to go get
Keep
it.
a string on it.
No. And then like what? Like a giant sea turtle is going to drink my wine?
No, the sea turtle doesn't have an opener.
No, they're big enough they can just open it.
That chew the top off the bottle.
You have drunk sea turtles, and then you have a whole different problem.
Right, let's just reframe the question.
Okay.
If you could only drink one specific wine for the rest of your life when you had wine, what would it be?
Like varietally?
Let's go a little deeper than that. Varietally and maybe an AVA or producer. But varietally is fine. If you don't want to go that deep. It's a hard question.
It is. It's a hard question.
Because people that love wine are like, get out of here with that question.
Because, okay, it's just like saying when people hear that you major in literature, they're like, oh, who's your favorite author?
Right.
And what's your favorite book?
Oh, I did that.
And but see how you can't really answer that question because it's like asking, well, what's your favorite movie? Because, okay, let's break it down. Like, are we talking about horror movies? Are we talking about romantic comedies? Like, what are we talking about?
We're asking
here?
a chef, what's your favorite thing to cook?
Yeah. And he's probably like, nothing. I just go to Burger King.
Yeah. I eat top ramen when I get home.
Yeah,
That's
seriously.
good.
Pop the popcorn and pop the bubbly and it's fine.
All right, let's reel it back in here though.
Okay.
What's your wine? Let's reframe it again. Just what's your go-to wine?
No, that's a great question because Friday it's like today's Friday. And I like
it could be any day.
It could be any day, but I'm letting the people know that it's Friday.
We're recording this on a Friday.
And the thing about Fridays is like I really like when I'm done with the week, like I really don't want to think. And so I want to know that there's something in the cellar that I want to drink. As long as there was a cool climate Pinot Noir in the cellar, I'm like good to go. So yeah, so I really do like cool Sonoma Coast. If I go to Carneros, I stay on the Sonoma side. Like I really like things cold.
All right, so we're going to taste some of those wines here at Nicholson Ranch in a little bit.
Yay.
We're going to taste with Deepak when we're done recording.
Okay, sounds good.
That's what you have that to look forward to.
Yeah.
You told me when you first sat down, you've been on other podcasts.
I have.
Do you have any podcasts you listen to that you love? I like to ask for podcast recommendations on my podcast.
So the podcast that I was on, they just did their last call was the We Like Drinking podcast.
They're done?
They're done. I mean, you can still re-listen to everything.
Podcasts stay out there forever.
Yeah. I recommend it because it's like you described. It's, quote, about, and not just wine. They talk about beer and spirits and things like that too. And it's not just about the drink or the alcohol or whatever. It's about the person, the conversation around, like that's happening around it. Like we talk about like goofy, crazy stuff on that show. Sorry that they're gone. What else podcast wise? I feel like I need to like pull out my phone and
Do you listen to any non-wine podcasts? Are you into any of those things?
I have Audible, so I listen. I also listen to books.
Okay.
As well as read books.
No, good for you. Good for you. Are you familiar with the wines of Washington State? I'm headed there next week.
Yeah.
I hope to be reporting with special podcast editions, but I might be having too much fun. I mean, I'm going to go taste a lot of wine.
Why just record one of your tastings?
Well, I got the adapters for the microphone. I can have it connected to my telephone and just have it like, hey, you guys want to talk? Let's talk.
Yeah.
Keep it casual, just like 5 minutes. Bang, bang, bang.
Those are the best.
We'll see what happens.
Those are the best interviews.
Do you have any questions for me?
What's your desert island wine?
Probably maybe a Shiraz from the Barossa Valley.
No, really?
Big, fat.
You like to chew your wine.
I like to chew my wine. Exactly. I like to chew. This Aglianico might be one of those.
It is. It's chewy. It's
chewy
sweet.
wine. Or, the cabs, the Merlots, the Syrahs from Washington State. Mm-hmm. Not to bag on Napa cabs, but they're just, the good ones are out of my price range.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the close. You ready?
I'm ready for it.
The Tall Mike Wine Podcast was conceived, and is written, produced, edited, and maintained by yours truly. I answer the mail, so write to me with feedback, questions, comments, or a request for coasters. Come on, they're free. I even pay the postage, and you will love them. Follow along on Instagram to see everything I'm up to, and if I'm not podcasting from Walla Walla next week, I'll certainly be posting on Instagram, trying to track down a karaoke bar at the moment. Do you really want to miss that? Apple Podcast listeners, drop a review, a rating, or something. It's a big help. Thanks for listening to episode 20. Thank you, Stacy Brsiscoe. From Nicholson Ranch in Sonoma, California, I'm Tall Mike Wine. Call me Mike. Cheers.